I have a guest this morning who is going to inspire you, is going to motivate you, is going to help you realize that you have great potential as a person, that you have the ability to be a champion no matter who you are. And in 1981, he was injured in a grain elevator explosion in Corpus Christi, Texas. The blast was considered to be the worst in South Texas history. He was thrown over 300 feet, suffering multiple injuries, which nearly killed him. He not only survived, but through hard work and determination, he has become a paraplegic champion, a world champion wheelchair athlete, now serves on the President Council on Physical Fitness. He has captured his true life story in the book, There's Always a Way. Would you please welcome with me Kevin Saunders. Kevin. Tell us how you ended up in this chair.
Well, like you said, I was in a grain elevator explosion, and for the people who don't know, a grain elevator has those big silos. This was on the Gulf Coast of Texas. They're 30 feet around and 100 feet tall, and they got concrete walls about 1.5 feet to 2 feet thick. And not many people know it, but grain dust is more explosive than dynamite and gasoline and approaches atomic energy. And somebody opened a can of phosphotoxin on top of one of those bins, and it was 1/4 mile away from where I was in an office building, right next to those big silos. I was doing government paperwork because I was a federal inspector just out of college. And the government's famous for paperwork, right?
They are, yes.
And all of a sudden, I heard this rattling and shaking. And before I know it, it was just turned to cracking and popping. It was so loud, it was like it was going to split your head wide open. And I looked off in the distance and saw those grain elevator walls. They're concrete, 1.5 feet, 2 feet thick with rebar, splitting apart like they're paper. And I looked at my coworker, Albert Tripp, and just like if we went off...
Now, you're 1/4 mile away from the grain elevator.
Well, no, we're 1/4 mile away from where Pete Garcia was on top of the bin floor, on top of those silos. He opened a can of phosphotoxin and it shot out a flame. It's known to happen maybe 1 in a billion times that one of these cans would do something like that. But this was one of those times. 15 explosions ripped through the grain elevator at 1,500 feet per second. And I happened to be where the last and the most powerful one exploded, and the whole wall of the building blew out in my face. The building I was in, there was nothing left. It was reduced to rubble. Nothing left but a concrete foundation. The blast, like you said, hurled me over a 2-story building 300 feet onto a concrete parking lot. And when my body slammed into that parking lot, my body bent over here right at my chest, just like you bend at your waist. And there was blood and cerebrospinal fluid coming from my ears, my nose, my mouth. And they didn't think I'd live. In fact, the headlines of the newspaper read that blood and bodies were scattered all over. And they were going to leave me, except for, thank the good Lord, there was one paramedic that thought I might make it. And they were out of stretchers because there were so many people. 10 people were killed that day. But they put me on a blown-off door, and that's good fortune to be here to speak to you today.
And they brought you to the hospital, and you recuperated.
Well, yeah, I remember my mom. I was in a coma, and I remember my mom being there to keep my faith in God. I had a hold of my hand, keep my faith in God, keep my strength and my hope. Don't ever lose it. You're going to make it. And I know hope is what dreams is made of. And there's a champion inside of each and every one of us, and I got some dreams I'll tell you about today.
And you became a champion. And tell us about that story. That's a wonderful story.
Well, my brother, I've been in a hospital almost a year, so my brother Gerald, an older brother that lived near Atlanta, Georgia, invited me to come to the Peachtree Road Race. That's the largest 10-kilometer, 6.2-mile road race in the world. So I went to the race. He signed me up and I went. And I was in that old hospital chair. You know, the kind, right?
That they roll you out from the hospital.
They weigh about 60, yes. 70 pounds. And when I got there, I saw these other guys in those chairs. There's one right behind you there. You want to...
A speed chair. This is what you're racing, is that right?
Yeah, yes, sir. What do you think that weighs?
Not much. You told me.
About 13 pounds. Well, these other guys looked at me and they said, when are you going to get in your racing chair? Well, I grew up on the farm in Kansas, so I had the natural Kansas farm boy response. I said, I'm in it. So when they fired the gun on the starting line, I bared down out of a hospital chair and I took off. And I'd been an athlete in high school and college, and I thought those guys are going to need those chairs to beat me, you know. But I soon found out that the flimsy gloves that I had on, they got torn up, and I had blisters on my hands, and it was a 6.2-mile race, and I was in a body cast, you know. They call it the turtle shell, from my neck to my waist. And
You were still in your body shell.
Yeah, and I was cranking that old hospital chair, and I finally got to mile 4, and I saw this hill. It was looked about 3/4 of a mile long. And there was a sign at the bottom that said Cardiac Hill. And you can imagine what I was thinking right then, right? I looked at my hands and I looked at the hill, and I looked at that sign and I said, no way. I said, I'm not going to make it. But I know all of us, each and every one of us here today, experience obstacles and trying times in our lives, and we need to count on God and have faith and believe in ourselves, and God will provide a way. But for me that day, there was some music playing on the side of that hill. It went something like this. It went dun 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 dun. I could see Rocky Balboa drinking that glass full of raw eggs, and I just thought, if he can do it, so can I. And I know that God's gift to me was life, and he gave me a second gift, a second chance at life when I didn't die that second day in that explosion. So I just said, if Rocky can do it, so can I. So I started cranking that old hospital chair up that hill, and I couldn't let it go, because if I did, it'd roll backwards. But I made it over the top. And when I got over the top, I had a mile left to go to the finish line. Yes. I thought, I've made it now. But they had a rule at the Peachtree Road Race, because it's the largest 10K road race in the world. 50,000 people in excess of that run that race. Down in the middle of Atlanta, there's people lined all the way. Well, you know, they're always yelling, go, go, go. And all of a sudden, here come Kip Kano and Craig Virgin at the top Olympic runners at the time. And I was so excited, because here I was right out of the hospital, and I was getting to run next to these Olympic athletes, until all of a sudden this great big lady grabbed me right by the shirt like this, and she said, hey, you've got to get off the race course because you've been passed by a foot runner. It's the rule. And that was the rule. And I could still hear that music, you know, that dun 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 dun. And I said, no way. And I pushed loose from her grip. And I thought, I came too far to be stopped, you know. I'm like Bob Dole, I got to go 96 for 96, right? Exactly. Kansas. And I was pushing. And I think, you know, I looked over my shoulder and I said, I'll see you. And I kind of meant at the finish line, because I thought she couldn't catch me since I had a little downhill. But, you know, I think that lady must have had some kind of radio communication device on her, because she radioed ahead and got 3 more race officials that looked just like her.
Just as big.
They set up a roadblock, and there was no way around, believe me. And I couldn't get through them, and I'll tell you, it brought tears to my eyes that day, because I never made it to that finish line. But that's the day that I set a goal, and I found out they had a wheelchair race. There was exhibition bin in the Olympic Games. You know, God set a light inside my soul. You know, when you inspire people, it's when the Spirit of God comes from within you and you share it with someone else. And I got inspiration that day, and it lit a light inside my soul to go to be the best in the world. I said, I'm never going to get pulled from that race course again.
And you haven't, have you?
No, I haven't. That's
Instead,
right.
you have done very well.
Well, I want to thank the Lord to give me that opportunity to be a champion, because God gives each and every one of us that same opportunity to bring the champion out that's within us all.
And he does. He brings it from within.
Absolutely.
He brings it out.
Light that light inside you, and light that spirit.
Absolutely. Well, you have won many awards. And today you want to give an award to someone. Yeah,
I want to thank God for allowing me to do that. And I'd like to give back. I thought a way to give back, instead of having a room full of medals, is to share them with other people, to just stand as a symbol that they've got a champion inside of them. And just to light that little fire in their soul, you know, to inspire them. And Christopher Bankston is here today. He's a young man that, when he's 14 years old at summer camp 6 months ago, was running, and he dove off into a shallow area when he suffered a real high-level C5 break of his spinal cord. And he was an athletic young man, and you know, I can imagine being 14 years old. At least I got to be able to graduate college and to play sports, but he got, you know, hurt at a young age, and I wanted to share with him one of the gold medals that I won. This was one that I won at the San Antonio, Texas Marathon. So there's the Alamos right on the front of this medal. So, viva la Texas! Viva la Texas! This is a little something right here. It says, the inscription says, presented to Christopher Bankston on the Hour of Power show. And it says, God made us all to be champions. And it has an action-packed wheelchair guy. There's never been one in a comic book or on the cartoons yet. And I'd like to present that to you. And it's just to show that, you know, it doesn't matter what situation you're in, that there's a champion inside of all of us. And let's let that serve as a reminder that when the going gets tough, to call on God, and He'll be there to help you and bring that champion out that's inside of you.
There's always a way. He'll be signing this book after the service. If you go to the bookstore, you'll be able to get his signature in it and pick up a copy.